I don't need to know how to fix a leaky pipe. I just need to know people who can fix a leaky pipe.
Right.
And it's the same thing everyone has always says, you're not going to go to your dentist to get your bike fixed. So that's where we come in, is to help find all those people and provide that huge network of support. So when you do need X, Y, or Z, we are there for you and ready to go.
Your network is your net worth. Come listen to some of the most successful people I know share invaluable knowledge, stories, and advice in real estate, business, and beyond. This is Weiss Advice. Whether you want to take your business or personal life to the next level, look no further. Welcome back to another episode of Weiss Advice. I'm your host, as always, Yonah Weiss. Grateful to be here today with not one, but two amazing guests on the show. We have Alexandra Alvarado and Alan Artcliff-Cronrod from the American Apartment Owners Association. You guys graciously bestowed upon me the Cost Segregation Expert of the Year award most recently, and very grateful to you both, and it's grateful to have acquainted you recently, and really excited to have you guys on the show.
Thanks for having us. Happy to have you as an expert as well.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. To be honest, I do a lot of podcasts and a lot of appearances, but I think the one we did together was actually was a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Definitely up there.
Good conversation.
Yeah, and I hope to do the same today. So I'd love to kind of give you guys each a little time just to kind of introduce yourself to our listeners who may not be so familiar with you. I know you guys gave me bios to read, but I don't read the bios. I just give for context, but I'd love to hear from your perspective, kind of who you are, how you got started in real estate, and maybe what you're working on.
Alan, you want to go first?
You can go ladies first, as always.
Well, my name's Alexandra Alvarado. Nice to meet you. So I essentially work as the Director of Marketing and Education at the American Apartment Owners Association. Been with the company since 2015, really just working on a lot of marketing for getting new members and also making sure that our members are staying up to date on the latest legal investing, all kinds of, tidbits of what they might need to be better investors and also just better property managers as well. So it's been a really fun ride. I host all of our webinars and I do some interviews with experts like you, Yonah. And I also oversee our Rent magazine, which is what the Best of Awards was for. That's a fun project I started a couple years back digitally, although we had it before in print. So we are fully digital now, which is really fun. We really reach as many people as, have the internet. So it's pretty awesome that we have such a big network now of just amazing landlords, and we're able to help them in a lot of different ways. So love working for AAOA. This is really my main real estate experience, although my parents are agents and my dad's an appraiser. They also invest as well. So I have some knowledge from them secondhand, but mostly everything I've learned so far has been through working with AAOA and really through my job here.
Awesome. Well, that's, been doing it for quite a while, and clearly you've succeeded, because it just goes to show you marketing is really the backbone of any organization, and to show you how people know about you and what they think about you and how they see you. And obviously you guys have a great name in the industry. So probably very, very much thanks to you.
That's really kind. I think there's a really great team, and Alan is part of that. He is the serial networker of the organization. So I'll let him tell you a little bit more about what he does. But I also think AAOA is very known now because of Alan's efforts. So it's definitely a team.
Absolutely. Yeah. So Alan, let's hear from you, and maybe obviously get into your backstory, but and how you founded AAOA, but maybe also just let our listeners know what exactly is the AAOA, the American Apartment Owners Association. Who's it for?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to go back. Actually, I married into this company. Oh, indirectly, I've been with this 2008 when I married into the company. But I think the story of AAOA starts much further away than that. And actually, we are, as a family, we are now this year celebrating 100 years in real estate. When My great grandfather came over and built his first home in Venice, which still stands. And then grandma continued doing it. Grandpa built a 10-plex, dad built a 400-plex, and we kind of been developers, builders, brokers, property managers, everything at some point now going at 100 years. So
Wow.
it's in the life thread of the family. And I came in to the company officially just a few years ago. And I think what we realized when COVID hit, that the world was changing. And we were all searching for a human connection from being separated for so much. And in a former life, my life was in luxury hospitality. So literally I spent every single day shaking hands and kissing babies and coffee with celebrities and networking. And so our president said, son, time for you to come over to the family business. And so I did. And so what AAOA is in this current iteration of the American Apartment Owners Association is we have realized that there are so many underrepresented owners and operators. Think of all those systems that are built to support owners and operators and property managers. If you have less than 250 or 300 units, they won't even talk to you.
Right.
And so those landlords need some support. And so I think in that iteration, in the iteration we are now, we are there to support those landlords, those people who inherited a triplex from grandma, or they live in a 10-plex that their grandfather built and, they rent out to 9 of their friends. And when the toilet breaks, they say, go get it fixed and I'll give you some cash for your receipt. And they require some assistance because they may not know exactly how to go about it in the most professional way. That's where we come in. We
Gotcha.
come in to educate. We come in to help them make sure they're getting the best tenants possible, to make sure they know what's happening in the world of real estate. They're kept up to date with all the new guidelines and regulations. And all those, as we know, are state specific. And so we can offer those to them, making sure that we are constantly up to date on what's happening in every state.
Mhm.
So I think that was a little combination of my background and what AAOA is. But yeah, and I still find myself shaking hands and kissing babies, and I love it.
Well, it's better than shaking babies and kissing hands. That's for sure.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah.
But what's fascinating is, I think a lot of the people that I speak to are people in the institutional, commercial real estate space, or the people that are syndicators and obviously dealing with much larger portfolios. And what you bring up here is really a huge percentage of owners across the nation. I'm sure you know the numbers better than I do. Are actually what we would call mom and pop owners,
Yep.
right? The people that own, one apartment unit or two or three buildings or whatever, but don't necessarily consider themselves a business per se, or they're certainly not institutional grade assets. So I think that's so valuable to have a network, like you said, and as well as an educational platform for people like that, who they're not in it necessarily for, obviously they're in it for the business of it. Maybe they inherited it, maybe not, but nevertheless, it is a business nonetheless, and they need to treat it as such. And I think some people just kind of treat it as, maybe a hobby, or maybe just something that they're doing on the side. How do you kind of translate that or bridge that gap? I know Alexandra, you talked about doing webinars and these kind of things, and
Yeah.
obviously the educational resources. Like, what do you think? I mean, what's the feedback you get from owners and from people who are in that position?
Yeah, I hate to say it, but a lot of times people do find us because they're having a problem. So, we are the solution to some of those issues, but they usually will encounter those issues and then look for a solution. We're really hoping people will be a little more preventative. I think we've made some really great steps towards it, but it's usually like, oh, I have my first problem tenant, or this is the first time I've had this sort of mold issue. What do I do? I've never really looked into this before, or I'm getting sued by a tenant. Why? What do I do about that? What are my rights? So a lot of the stuff is reactionary. That's how people find us. But what we're trying to do once they're in our network is hopefully educate them towards, preventing some of those issues from happening. So that's in the form of, our blog, newsletter, magazine, courses, which we're going to be launching soon, to really have a more comprehensive training and certification on certain topics that we really should all know, but landlords are just expected to know so many different things. And like you said, if it's not, necessarily their full-time job, or they don't think of it that way, then it's sort of like they're just doing what they can. And as the issues arise, they'll start to like learn about it. But hopefully, that's what we're trying to do is prevent that from happening in the first place and really educate them beforehand. So we have some really awesome experts. Yonah, you're one of them. And it's really great for us to be able to say, hey, you're having an issue with this or that, or you want to learn about a specific topic before it becomes an issue. Here's who you can talk to or who you can learn from. The webinars are really great. That's something that we do live where you can actually interact with an expert and have a Q&A. So, I mean, especially if we have an attorney on, that always does well. Everyone wants to know,
For sure.
how do we get, legal advice? And it's tough because things are changing so quickly. So yeah, landlords have a lot on their shoulders, a lot of expectations they have to keep up with.
Yeah, I think obviously with the digital space that we're in and the times that we're living in, having that kind of real time interaction capability. Obviously, like you said, when you're doing a live event or a live webinar, that's the best time. Have you thought about doing any type of like kind of forum or Facebook group type of thing where
Yes.
there's a lot of interaction there?
Just today, Yonah, I had a whole meeting about starting a community of our own. We have a LinkedIn group, we have a Facebook group, we have that, but we kind of want to do something that's a little bit more private for, landlords on our network. So I really think that's going to be huge for us. We are looking into it right now. But as far as right now, we do have like a LinkedIn group, and, that's always a great way to connect with others. But we only have, a certain number of people on the LinkedIn group. There's a lot more members, I think. So that's something we're working on definitely. And also, I think through the webinars, people do get to connect with each other a little bit. We're also planning to have a live event, which is really exciting this year. So getting some of that like in-person, face-to-face contact, which we've missed so much
Mhm.
since the pandemic. And I think that's, just also really important is having that like in-person interaction. So I'm really excited for that. I know Alan is too. We've been working on it together and he's had his hands full already and the event isn't until October. So
I
that
assume
tells
it's
you a
in
little
I
bit.
assume it's in Southern California, right? Because that's where you guys are.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. But, we're probably going to network out and do others in other locations. We have members all over the place. A lot of them are California. Obviously, there's a reason why, right? It's a tenant friendly state. So they come to us with a lot of questions. But, we do have members all over the country. And so, especially like Texas, Florida, New York, those areas, even Illinois, I could see us having some events there in the future as well, but we'll start, close to home and invite everyone to come, even from out of state if they want. But a lot of the stuff will be California kind of legal updates as well. So I think it'll benefit the California members the most.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mhm.
Alan, as an owner and operator and developer yourself, what kind of benefit do you get from the community that you have? I mean, it really is something that you've not created, obviously, but have come into and are really managing and seeing it through.
Right. I think what's really special is that no one has to be an expert about everything.
Of course.
There are other experts out there that are willing and want to provide their information. And it's been amazing to speak to so many experts and authors and podcasts and gurus and all those people that you and I both know. And the common and overwhelming response I get when I talk to them is whatever I can do to share my knowledge. That's what has been really heartwarming about this. And you talked about, bridging that gap between people that you deal with and, our mom and pops. And the first thing that came to my mind here in California, as Alexandra mentioned, it's very tenant friendly. But if you evict a tenant the wrong way and they take you to court, they will wipe you out.
Yeah.
And so some of those large companies that have the knowledge, they have an HR department, they have all of that, they have all the attorneys behind them, are much more equipped to respond to those type of tenant situations. Whereas dentist Dr. Smith that happens to have 3 triplexes,
Hmm.
you know, doesn't really know how to do that. But a tenant that might come back and, bring some legal things for evicting them the wrong way, it could wipe them out. And so that's where we like to say, we want to take that information from those experts who may deal with those bigger units, because it's being evicted in California from a, 1,000-unit complex is the same as being evicted from a duplex.
Hmm.
And so that's where I think that gap can be drawn and we can bring those people together, because there's enough knowledge to go around. And so as an owner operator, it is knowing where to find the right people. I don't need to know how to fix, a leaky pipe. I just need to know people who can fix a leaky pipe,
Right.
and it's the same thing everyone has always says, you're not going to go to your dentist to get your bike fixed, So that's where we come in, is to help find all those people and provide that huge network of support. So when you do need X, Y, or Z, we are there for you and ready to go.
Yeah. I mean, the network can never be underestimated, the power of the network. Who you know is much more important than what you know. Because, like you said, no one can be an expert in everything, but having those people at your disposal when you need it is extremely important. And it's funny, you both mentioned, that California is more tenant friendly. I often hear and people refer to it in quite the inverse of that, that it's actually not friendly to landlords, you know what I mean? So it's like, I guess it's just the perspective. Obviously, you guys are coming to represent or to be kind of a voice for landlords or for people who own the properties. There's plenty of groups out there that are kind of advocating for tenants, and that's, I think, why the laws in California specifically are so kind of
Oh, yeah.
imbalanced, but we gotta fight back.
Yeah. There's definitely an effort. I think now it's very becoming apparent that it's a nationwide effort to sort of make up for some of the issues that tenants experienced during the pandemic. There is just a very hard push right now all over the place, not just in California. California is really just the testing ground for these ideas, and other states soon will follow suit on many of those things. So if you see something in California, you're probably going to see it start to pop up next in, I don't know, Colorado,
Mhm.
Washington, Arizona. So like I mean it's very interesting to see how that happens, and it's very very clear that just nationwide there's an effort. And even with the Biden administration, they've also made it pretty clear that with their renters bill of rights that they put out last year, that they are very motivated to
Mhm.
look into, renters rights and all the things that that entails, which some of them can be certainly positive, I think, for consumers, tenants in general. But I mean, it just has to, like you said, be done in a balanced way, right? Where landlords are taken into consideration and that they also would want to still be landlords after the legislation is passed. Because if we don't have landlords, especially I think the ones that are, really they're passionate about what they do, they provide a great service of housing to people, right? We
Right.
want to keep those. And hopefully they won't all be leaving some of these states passing these laws. But, it gets tough at a certain point for landlords to
It's
really want
very
to invest in certain areas.
Yeah, it's
So,
very challenging. It
mm,
is, especially when you feel like you're working, up against, up the hill against the government, oftentimes when you have these rights the tenants have. And especially someone who's not a full-time investor or someone who doesn't
Mhm.
own like a real estate company, which is kind of funny because a lot of it must have to do with media, clearly, but a lot of people have this idea of like landlords who are like they're evil and they're slumlords and they're people that are, just they have so much money and they're just taking advantage of people who just want a place to live. When in fact, most of the people, as are, regular average Joes who happen to, own a property. And you don't need a huge boatload of money. In fact, most of them don't have a lot of money. They take out a loan and are running and operating it. And so if a tenant doesn't pay or you have to go through a legal process, like you said, Alan, it can literally wipe someone out. So it's like people are just trying to run a simple business. And
Yep. And, I think that's the one thing that we faced the most during the pandemic, with all the renters, the rent moratoriums that went on, and the unlimited amount of calls we got from owner operators that said, I still have my mortgage to pay. And they haven't paid rent in a year. I'm not getting any assistance. I still have my mortgage to pay. And I think, just like Alexandra had mentioned, California it's always the first place to happen. And there was just a huge thing in Santa Monica that went on 2 weeks ago, talking about the housing in Santa Monica, whether you are, and I don't know all the exact things that happen, whether it's under rent control or not rent control. Even if you evict and you want to remodel, you can only go up by a certain percentage. And if it's happening here, mark my words, it can happen anywhere. And
right.
so that's where we try to step in and be that voice for those those landlords and say, hey, I've got a mortgage to pay. And I think you knocked it on the head. Everyone has this perception of landlords of just, oh, I'm just rolling in it. And I'm living off of a trust fund. That's not how it is. These are people that, have a 9 to 5 job. And on the weekends, they go putter around in their units to make sure that the paint is okay. And they mow the grass themselves, and they're trying to make a better lives for their children. Well, if you're having issues with your tenants, you're not bringing in any income.
Right. 100%. Are you guys doing any sort of like government lobbying or advocacy in that realm? Or is it strictly kind of due to educational for the investors or owners?
Yeah, I mean, we're strictly educational. We stay pretty politically neutral when it comes to that, but we really just want to provide as much education and support for our landlords if they do want to get involved and they do want to be a part of those efforts. They certainly would know about them through
Mhm.
us, but we ourselves do not lobby on behalf of landlords. But we take a lot of opportunities to state our opinion in the media. And I just had this conversation with a reporter from CBS News about telling me, is there anyone in your network, any landlord that we can interview? We need their side of the story because unfortunately, as you said, the media really is so one-sided. And I'm so happy that there was finally a reporter who's reaching out to me and asking me to get this perspective because it's so important. And I reached out to some of, the landlords in our network that, I've been talking to just to see if they'd be open to it. And, some of them actually, I got great responses. They're like, yeah, absolutely. We want to say our side of the story, but we don't want to get in trouble. So we're going to want to be anonymous just in case, if we're going through something with a tenant. But in any case, I'm like, great, we need more of this, right? I
Right.
think what's just so interesting, you hinted at it at the beginning, is that there's really like more. I think actually it's not more, it's like right around the halfway point, the last time I checked, of units that are owned by independent landlords. So, I mean, it's a little less than half. It's a lot of landlords. They are, most of them 2 to 4 units is the most common. And that's really, where they're the most affected by all of these things happening. So, you're right. It's just really unfortunate that there's no distinction in the media or even legally, as to how it affects someone with this many units versus a more institutional investor. So, we're really trying to make that known. And I think media presence definitely helps. I really try to, like, anytime a reporter reaches out to us, I'm like, how can I help you? What can I do for you? We want to get this in the news and we want to make sure that landlords are represented. So that's how we play into it as well. And just putting out our own stories too that also get referenced in the media. So that's really helpful. We have a great writers. We also try to stay on top of it and create our own content. So I think that also can be really helpful with the cause.
For sure. Yeah.
Mhm.
Very, very important to make sure. Because a lot of times, even the real estate publications that are out there oftentimes have, like every news organization, they want to show something that kind of instills fear or gets people's emotions around. So they want to publish headlines or stories that may make things out to be worse than they actually are, or in a different light than the reality is. But as long as you're out there just providing context and providing the real resources to the real stories, I think that's important. The story will get out there.
Yeah. And one thing that I've been seeing a lot because of the pandemic, and we talked about how it can be extremely difficult to be a landlord. A mom and pop landlord can be very tough. You're putting in your heart and your sweat and your tears and every last penny you're putting into your property. And so my favorite and slash least favorite question that I get, because we're a brokerage here in California. And we have about 130 affiliate brokers across the country that help our members to buy and sell in new markets across the country. And one of my favorite questions that I get is, hey, Alan, they'll send me over something. Is this a good deal?
Right.
And it's my favorite question in the world because I get to turn it right back around and say, there's no such thing as an overall good deal. It might be a good deal for you, but it's not a good deal for somebody else.
Right.
And so that's my favorite response to that is, this point is I've had so many that have said, I'm going to start I'm starting to, move some of this money into syndication. So I do to be that landlord and I
Right.
can kind of wipe myself clean of all that legal stress that might come on board. Or, I'm going to buy a strip mall with this money instead and have a management company manage that for me. And I think, overall, that's probably the smartest way to look at a portfolio is, to diversify.
Right.
So you're not hammer in hand every weekend fixing a toilet and you know that you've got some safety, although anything, safety is always in air quotes because there's no way under your mattress is really the only safe place for it these days. So
Yeah, it's hard. It's very hard, like, especially for this mom and pop. What's interesting is that it's a totally different asset class as well, especially when you're dealing with smaller multifamily, 2, 4, 10 unit properties, 50, 100, 200, 300 units. It's like a totally different ballgame and targeting completely different owners oftentimes. So you're going to be dealing with different people when you're talking to them. So it's definitely not passive. That's the funny thing about it. A lot of people get into real estate thinking it's passive income. I'll buy a property and get rent checks and cash flow and stuff like that. Not a chance.
not at all.
Not at all.
If only it were that easy.
Right. Well,
But
guys,
even going to the institutional, going syndication, you can't just pick up the phone and Google what's the best syndicator.
100%.
It's
Yeah,
not that easy. So even finding a passive person to passively invest for you is an active operation.
it is. And
As our president had Jeff always said, there is no such thing as passive investing. You have to be extremely active to make sure that those people are doing the best for you and your portfolio. And that's an active job.
absolutely. And unfortunately, that's been overlooked quite a bit over the past few years when the market was extremely favorable. The interest rates were extremely favorable and people were making money without having to do anything, basically. Now people are finding out the hard way, even when they invested passively, even when they did their active kind of job, finding who was the best people to invest with, even those people are hurting now, unfortunately, a lot of them. So, it is what it is. We got to obviously do our jobs and try to be the best investors we can. And the way to do that is to just continue educating yourself. But I want to transition now to what we call the final four. These are 4 questions that I like to ask all my guests. I'll ask each one of you and take it whichever way you want to go with it. First question for Alexandra: what's the worst job that you ever had?
Okay. I'm going to say this is not probably the answer you want, but I have been lucky enough never to have a bad job. Like, seriously, I have been. I would say on paper, maybe the worst job was having to make calls for Pepperdine, my alma mater, while I was there to get donations from alumni and others in the network. But although I hated it at the time, now it made me like really comfortable on the phone and I can ask for anything. So, I mean, it was a great life skill, but at the time I hated it. So
Right.
that would be the closest thing to having a bad job. But, no one likes asking people for money. But if you get good at it, it's a great skill to have. So I'll highly recommend it.
It's an excellent skill to have.
Yeah,
I think
definitely.
everyone hates it, but it's an excellent skill to have, especially dealing with capital raising. Also, it's all about perspective. But yeah, I mean, listen, everyone has, even if you have all great jobs, it's all relative. It's the worst for you, relatively speaking. But I definitely understand how that could be. But you're blessed. That's true. Not to have had a lot of people have had. It's so funny how I get the answers on this show from that question. Very so widely. But Alan, how about you? What's the worst job you ever had?
I'm going to have to first job of having that 12-year-old being 12 years old and having that paper route
Mm,
because I had that paper route in Southern Michigan. And so getting up at 6 o'clock in the morning in January when there's 18 inches of fresh snow with a wagon of, 150 newspapers. And you've got to find your way to get through that snow to deliver 150 newspapers at 6 o'clock in the morning. In retrospect, I have to look and my dad would be like, "Hey, you signed up for this. You can always leave your job. You signed up for this because you want to buy that new red bicycle or whatever it was." So it built character, and obviously I'm still around, so I didn't die of hypothermia. So there you go.
that's tough. Yeah, definitely a tough one. But I made the right call there. Second question is an interesting one. What's a book you've read that's given you a paradigm shift?
Well, there is a recent one. I'll go with a recent one. I Blaze Your Own Trail by Pamela Goodwin. Such a good She just sent it to me. You have it
Oh,
too. She said she went
I
too.
have it.
Yeah. It's really great interviews of women in real estate and including
mm,
commercial. And I really found a lot there in terms of inspiration for myself. And I think sometimes it just helps, especially I think for women to just hear someone else's story, just to know that it is possible. And a lot of times that is what keeps people where they are. So knowing what is possible and what others have done is just the questions that she asks are the same to every person. And so I found it really interesting to see how each of those people answered and kind of
right.
made me think as well, like what would those answers be for me?
Hmm.
And what can my future possibly look like? And I found it to be really inspirational. The other book that I really liked was Breathwork, which is just more of like physical well-being kind of book. So I think it's important to have like a bit of a balance, right? So professional and I like self-help books. I have to say I'm a
Sure.
little bit of a self-help book junkie, but they all seem to give me at least a little something to think about. So I tend to read that more than anything.
Okay. Well, that's awesome. We'll make sure to put both of those in the show notes for anyone who wants to
Yeah.
check out Breathwork and Blaze Your Own Trail. That's sounds great. And it is important. I think, one thing that I've definitely noticed being in the commercial real estate space for past, 8, 9 years is women are, extremely underrepresented, and seeing successful women come through, and we've had, dozens, scores of them on this podcast. And it's just amazing to see. So definitely want to check that one out as well. Alan, what about you? A book that's giving you a paradigm shift?
Yeah, I'm gonna stick with Alexandra on this, and I'm a self-help junkie. And I was recently purchased a book. A friend of mine, Sarah Smith, is a life coach, and she contributed to a book called Ignite Your Courage. Came out maybe 2, 3 months ago. And I am one for always wanting something to hold on to. Everyone calls it their daily mantra. And I am old school. And so if you were to look at my office, you'll see I have post-it notes all over the place. And the one that really got me on this one was, and I'm just reading it from this post, and it says, "The future is made up of blank pages."
Hmm.
And it allows you to sit back and go, tomorrow's a new day. I may have a lot of things on my schedule tomorrow. It's going to be a really tough day tomorrow, but it's a blank page. No one has written that page yet. And so the only person in control of that blank page is the person with the pen, and that's you.
Wow.
And so I have to constantly remind myself that if tomorrow looks too busy for me and I can't get, I have 2 sons and I can't get one to a baseball game, or I can't pick up the other one at soccer, I'll cancel a meeting. I will push it back to the next day because my family comes first. They're the reasons why I do what I do. So when I get to look at tomorrow's blank page, if it doesn't suit my mood, I'm going to change it to make sure that I am giving the attention to the people that deserve it.
Awesome. Ignite Your Courage. That
Yeah.
sounds like that's a great title also. Make sure to put
Mhm.
that in the show notes as well. Third question, what's a skill or talent that you would like to learn? And this can be anything.
I was just thinking about going to a pottery class. So that was kind of a interesting little skill hobby that I'm looking to learn. That's more of a fun thing.
Sure.
So, I'm always looking for fun little hobbies to try out. The only one I've really committed to long term has been yoga, but now it's more of like part of my life. But I mean, I do want to check that out. Or it's either pottery or glass blowing, which I've seen now a couple shows on, and it just looks so cool. But I don't
Right.
know. I'm kind of scared of this. I kind of scared of that big giant oven they put everything in, but it would be interesting to try it out and see what I can make. So we'll see if I end up doing that. But it'll probably start with pottery. It's a little easier here. That's probably my next one.
For sure. Yeah, sounds cool. Definitely good to kind of branch out new hobbies all the time. So
Hmm.
that's fun. Alan, what about you? A skill or talent you'd like to learn?
Yeah, I'm gonna say I personally have an absolute deathly fear of the water.
Really?
When I was much younger, I don't even know if Alexander, when I was much younger, I got caught in an undertow on the North Shore of Oahu, and they found me at the bottom of the ocean. They had to revive me and bring me
Wow.
back. And so I constantly have a fear of the ocean. And so I always want to work on pushing my boundaries when it comes to that, and learning the skill of, I guess, the skill of finding my center and finding myself in order to take one further step. I don't know if I would call that a skill or whatever, but it's a work in progress every single time I'm out near the ocean.
Sure. No, and obviously for good reason. I mean, a traumatic experience like that is very hard to overcome. But, we got to face our fears. So
That's good.
kudos to you for trying and to wish you success with that. And leading to our final question, which is what does success mean to you?
Well, for me, that has changed a lot over the years. And I think nowadays, to me, it means just having a balance in my life and being able to do my job really well, but also personally in my life feel like I am
Hmm.
completely balanced and I can feel myself getting out of balance sometimes. And, to me, success is maintaining that balance. And I really love what you said, Alan, about changing your day accordingly and not being just so set in your ways that things have to be a certain way in order for you to feel like they worked. So every day is a little bit different. But I think more than anything, what carries me through, what I find to be successful is when I feel like, wow, I had a balance this week of taking care of myself, taking care of the people that I love, and also being really productive at the same time. And that to me is successful. I think I finally kind of started to figure out how to do it. I was definitely not in balance for most of my younger years. And so that to me is success and being able to keep that, right? So
Yeah.
as things change, being able to maintain it is actually pretty challenging. So that's really my goal, but also what I would think is successful at the end of my life. I want to know that I lived like a pretty balanced life and that I wasn't
Right.
completely lost. So that to me is so important.
Absolutely. That's
Mhm.
extremely important. I love that definition of success. And that's what it's really all about, having a balanced life. So Alan, what about you? What does success mean to you?
It very much goes along the same with Alexandra. The initial part of that is that having to me, success is recognizing and knowing that it's all the small stuff. That common phrase, don't sweat the small stuff, and it's all small stuff. It really truly is. And, to me, the true mark of success is being able to be the one who is holding that pen to write tomorrow's blank page. I've got the family that supports it. I've got the home and the roof above my head. I've got the food on my table. I've got the car. I've got what I want. And I get to write tomorrow's page. So I don't know if anyone can really ask. You can't ask for much more than that.
Absolutely.
And
That's
knows it had nothing to do with money. It really doesn't. It has to do with being where you want to be, wherever that picture is, and having that pen in your hand to write tomorrow's story.
absolutely 100%. Love that. Well, this has really been awesome. Great conversation. So grateful to both of you for taking the time today. For our listeners who would like to find you or reach out to you, what's the best way they can do that?
Well, our website, AAOA.com, that is where you can go to get a lot of the resources we talked about today, which are completely free. So definitely join the association for free, get into the loop of what's going on. That's really the best way. Any communications you'll get, I probably wrote at some point. And so if you want to reply, I'll probably can respond. I am a lot more responsive than people think. So you go to our website and just join for free. You'll probably get a hello from me automatically. And then also, if you do want to reach out to me on LinkedIn, that's always a good place, Alexandra Alvarado. And, I'd love to connect with anyone there and hopefully see them, join one of our future webinars or courses or something like that. Give me a shout out if any one of you ends up going. We have a webinar next week. I'll give a little plug for it on it's an emergency briefing on insurance that is skyrocketing for landlords. It's a huge issue this year. And so we're going to have an insurance expert on to really talk to us about what we can do. So you want to join that, go to AAOA.com and join for free. You'll get an invitation once you're in.
Awesome. We'll make sure to
Mhm.
put that also in the show notes. And Alan, I'm assuming the same way, LinkedIn or through the website.
Alan at AAOA.com.
There you go.
Or find you with me through you. It's very easy.
Exactly. Yeah. You can always find everyone through me and through the
Exactly.
podcast. Awesome. Well, thank you guys again for joining me. Really, really been a pleasure, and looking forward to speaking again soon.
Thanks, Yonah.
Sounds good.
Have a
Thanks.
good one.
All right. And to our
Bye.
listeners, thank you guys for joining all the way to the end once again. And remember, the best advice comes only when you ask. Real quick, I have one question for you. Did you like this episode? If you did, I want to ask you a huge favor. See, the biggest thing that helps this podcast grow and that will spread this message to the whole world is that if you leave a review, a rating, and subscribe to the podcast. What that does is it basically tells the platforms that this podcast is out on is that you like my stuff and I'm doing something right. So take a few seconds out of your day, hit that subscribe button, leave a rating or review. I would be extremely grateful. Also, I want to hear from you guys. So I want to hear some feedback. If you have any questions for future episodes, please find me on LinkedIn, send me a DM, a connection request, Yonah Weiss, and I'd love to hear from you.